So let's recap where we've come so far. So we've seen that Dworkin believes that initially speaking, everyone is like this shipwreck survivor coming to this deserted island. And just like each survivor, no one of us inherently in the very beginning has more of a right to the resources on that island than anybody else. In the same manner, each of us initially speaking when we first come into this world have earned nothing, no initial right to more of the resources of this world than anybody else. And so therefore each of us deserves both equal concern and equal respect. And the only way that both equal concern and equal respect can be satisfied, in other words, that a government can guarantee that for people, is to aim for an equal distribution of resources devoted to each person's life and the life they choose to lead. So now this equal distribution of resources cannot be, we said, simply an equal division of stuff. It can't be, okay, everyone gets the same amount of pizza. Simply because that wouldn't satisfy the essential condition for us feeling like it's equal, and that is people will always feel like they got the shorter end of the stick, either because some people's preferences were satisfied over others or were shown favoritism over others, or because some people got more of what they wanted than you did, and so it wouldn't satisfy this principle of envy. So thus, what we want to do is a distribution that equalizes the worth of what you get rather than the amount of stuff that you get. And in order to do this, it has to satisfy three conditions. So the first is that it first has to respect the relative value that different people place on different things. I value pizza more than you do, maybe. Maybe because I grew up in New York and had good pizza. But, so therefore, I should be required to pay more for pizza than you would. But you should be given the opportunity to spend the amount you would want on that. And so thus, when he says that we're going to do an auction allows that to happen. There people are going to be devoted or given an equal amount of money that has the same amount of worth and purchasing power. And so, but it also should be such that the relative costs of what I buy in the auction should be such that the total cost includes not just the initial purchase, not just the initial value of the thing, but also the cost over the lifetime of what I have purchased based on the choices that I've made. In other words, when I decide, for example, to smoke, I'm not only just paying the carton price on the carton of cigarettes every time I'm buying it. I should also be considering the total amount of healthcare costs that are included as a consequence of me choosing to smoke. Or the kinds of consequences on my teeth, or the kinds of consequences, therefore, on my likelihood of finding someone who accepts smokers and likes being around smokers and is willing to live with a smoker. In other words, the total cost of my choice to smoke isn't simply the monetary value of it, but all of the other costs that go into the cost-benefit analysis. And so it should include in the auction that kind of price, but only that kind of price. The consequences of my choices, because that's what I'm purchasing and is under my control. But it should not include the cost based, as we said, on what is called brute luck. Brute luck being the stuff that's not under my control, that pretty much is the hand that's dealt to me in life, depending on circumstances and handicaps, and also depending on the amount of native talent or natural talent that I have. That should not be included as part of the costs of what I get or what I purchase in the initial auction and the initial distribution. And so ideally speaking, what satisfies this requirement, as we said, is an initial auction which allows the natives to have equal amount of purchasing power and purchase the things they really want, but it should be such that there is also, after the initial auction, a method of redistributing income, you might say, or resources attributable only to talent and not ambition. We will need a way of separating the kind of money you make or the kinds of resources you accumulate that are based only on what your native talents are and not on ambition, where what we mean by ambition is your choices and the sacrifices you're willing to make to achieve the goals that you've set through your own choice. Again, let us remind ourselves why we want to make that distinction. Because again, our talents aren't our fault, are they? We don't choose our talents. They come to us. If I'm born with a certain amount of intellect, that intellect is maybe less than other people, then what's going to happen? Well, there are studies that show that IQ is linked to income. So that the higher your IQ, the more likely your average income will be higher. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that if I have two people who are willing to work equally hard for a certain life, and yet one has a higher IQ than the other, the likelihood that that person with the higher IQ will do better in life is higher. And so thus it's likely that at the end of a certain amount of time, George will make more money than Troy at the same profession, even though both want to lead that kind of lifestyle. And what will be the difference is not the choices they made, and not the ambitions or the sacrifices or the virtue they had that pushed them in that direction, but simply the native talent that George had over Troy. But that's not a product of George's choices. George just had better brute luck than Troy. And so this shouldn't count in the distribution of resources. The kinds of things that George gets over Troy that are not George's fault, that are not George is not responsible for, that would be a cause of envy in Troy. Troy would feel like he had the shorter end of the stick because he had no control of that. And so it wouldn't be fair. So that's why we need such a method. His answer, just like with handicaps, is we think of our auction also having an insurance market, not just for handicaps like tornadoes or going blind, but also insurance which he calls underemployment insurance. What is underemployment insurance? Well, it's the idea of this, that the natives, before they actually go to the auction and are given their amount of money, okay, they know their talents, okay? They know that the talents already, but what they don't know is how marketable these talents will be in the subsequent economy that's set up after the initial auction. So I know, say, for example, that I'm very good at analyzing concepts, say abstract philosophical concepts. But what I won't know is how much money that will make me in the subsequent economy of our island nation here. So everyone is allowed to know their talents, but what they don't know is how much those talents will produce for them. Okay? And thus, I have the opportunity to insure against failing to have the opportunity or talents to earn a certain amount of income. In other words, what I'm insuring against is not my talents, like with handicaps. I'm not ensuring that I don't have enough the talents I want, but rather I'm insuring against those talents not making me enough money to lead the kind of lifestyle I want to lead. In our next video, we'll explain why he doesn't treat it exactly like handicaps, but instead says, let's instead look at the marketability of those talents.